Ren Arasaka stood perfectly still before a sea of empty chairs. The delicate pastels of the wedding hall mocked the hollow silence that now filled the space. Rose-colored ribbons fluttered softly on the breeze coming through the ornate windows. Candles flickered on untouched centerpieces, casting glints of light against crystal glasses and gold-trimmed plates. Everything had been meticulously planned. The floral arrangements, the champagne tower, the lavender-accented cake that now sagged slightly on one side from being left out too long. But the bride had never arrived, and now the air was thick with embarrassment. He could feel it in the way the staff avoided looking him in the eye, and the way the florist's assistant whispered behind the archway. But what stung most was not the silence, but the absolute absence of explanation. No message, no call. Just the deafening clarity of abandonment. Ren, the reserved and slightly awkward bookstore owner, had never expected grand gestures. He didn't even like the spotlight. But this public, pastel-colored humiliation, this was something else entirely. Behind the grand hall tucked in a side chamber meant for the wedding party's private use, he wandered like a ghost. The room was quiet except for the low hum of refrigeration from a drinks cart, and a soft dripping from a cooler where the ice was already half melted. He loosened his collar, fingers trembling, his mind adrift somewhere between numb disbelief and a rising panic that refused to settle. It was there, amid wilted bouquets and abandoned silk ties, that he first noticed someone else. Kaito Ruma was slumped in an adjacent chair, still wearing the dark plum waistcoat of a groom. His blazer was off and discarded, one shoe missing, his left hand clutching a nearly empty bottle of Sakura champagne. His head turned slightly at the sound of Ren's hesitant footsteps, his face a complicated sculpture of disbelief and raw anger. There was a red smear on his white dress shirt, a melted stroke from a discarded slice of strawberry cake, and his tie had been undone with the same violence someone might apply to tearing a letter from a lover who never wrote back. Another ghosted groom? Kaito asked hoarsely, without looking up. Ren stared at him, unsure how to respond. Kaito's eyes found his then sharp, bloodshot, yet curious. They appraised each other without words. Two strangers, both wearing suits meant to begin a new chapter, both stranded on the same terrible page. Ren nodded mutely, a single motion that somehow encapsulated everything. The shock, the shame, the aching embarrassment of a love so loudly declared and so suddenly denied. Kaito patted the seat beside him. "You look like you could use a drink," he said. Without thinking, Ren took it. The bottle passed between their hands like a ritual, the Sakura champagne cool and bittersweet, its bubbles fizzing gently like a cruel joke. They drank in silence for several moments, neither offering details, as if saying it aloud would make it more unbearable. "The cake's melting," Kaito said eventually, nodding to a nearby table. Ren followed his gaze. The cake, once a centerpiece of joy, was now slumped like a wounded animal. Pink icing bled into white, a petal of edible rose drooping over the edge. It seemed absurd, grotesque almost. He gave a dry, bitter laugh. "I ordered it because she said it reminded her of cherry blossoms in Kyoto," he murmured. "It was the only thing she was excited about. She told me she always hated cake," Kaito said. "She just wanted the pictures." Their shared chuckle was brief and hollow, but it loosened something in the air. For the first time since the day had gone sideways, Ren felt like someone else understood. "She left you today?" Ren asked cautiously. "About 3 hours before the ceremony," Kaito replied. "Sent a text. Said she couldn't do it, that she needed to find herself." "Whatever the hell that means." Ren flinched. "Mine didn't send anything at all." "Damn," Kaito muttered, eyes narrowing. "That's cold." They fell into silence again, but this time it was companionable, bonded by ruin. Kaito reached for another glass, and poured the rest of the champagne between them. A fine mist rose from the liquid, catching the golden light from a chandelier overhead. And then it happened. No doors opened, no fans stirred, but suddenly, inexplicably, petals began to fall, soft, weightless, and undeniably real. Delicate sakura petals drifted down from the ceiling like confetti thrown by an invisible hand. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, filling the air between the two men in a pink swirling spiral that neither of them could explain. They landed in Ren's lap, tangled in Kaito's hair, floated on the surface of their shared champagne like fragments from another world. Ren blinked, instinctively brushing one from his sleeve. What the hell? Kaito stood slowly, stepping into the shower of petals with a look that was part awe, part disbelief. Is this part of the decoration? No, Ren shook his head. No one ordered this. It wasn't planned. The petals kept coming for a few more seconds, a magical, almost haunting cascade, before slowing to a stop. They lay on the floor like remnants of a celebration that never happened, like a farewell that no one gave voice to. Ren glanced at the ceiling. There were no hidden machines, no open vents, nothing to suggest how or why, just the lingering scent of cherry blossoms in the air. I've seen a lot of things, Kaito said softly, his voice suddenly grave. But not that. A strange silence settled over them, charged and solemn, the kind that follows an unexplainable moment, the kind that feels like a message, though no one can say what the message is. Neither man dared speak for a minute or two, each processing the silent poetry of their ruined weddings, and the impossible whimsy of that moment. Ren bent down, picked up a single petal, and held it in his palm. It's real, he said, as if trying to convince himself. Some things are, Kaito replied, even when everything else turns out fake. And in that side room, surrounded by abandoned dreams, cake crumbs, and the delicate wreckage of their former lives, two men shared the kind of grief only the abandoned can know, sharp, surreal, and tinged with something too beautiful to name. The day after the wedding that wasn't, Ren Arasaka stood behind the counter of his small bookstore in Hanamachi, hands trembling as he fumbled with the register keys. He'd reopened that morning like nothing had happened. The bell above the door chimed politely whenever someone entered. Customers browsed in the usual hush, but something in the air had shifted. People were whispering, not about books. His phone vibrated again. It had been doing that non-stop since dawn. At first he thought it was leftover messages from guests or family, trying to offer vague condolences for the failed wedding. But no, the notifications were from TikTok. It had started with a video, a short shaky clip, filmed through a slightly open doorway, at the wedding venue. The video showed two men in suits, sitting side by side in a pastel-lit side room, drinking from the same bottle of Sakura champagne, surrounded by an inexplicable swirl of cherry blossom petals. The caption, two grooms, one fate hash, Renkai hash, meet cute, gone wrong hash, Hanamachi magic. The video had gone viral overnight, hundreds of thousands of views, comments pouring in. Wait, this is straight out of a BL anime. Oh, left the petals. Hello, spirits, ghosts? Okay, but they need to kiss, right now, or I'm calling the author of their lives. Ren x Kaito =sign Renkai. I ship it harder than UPS. His store's modest social media presence had exploded. Tags and mentions flooded in. Art accounts were posting fan illustrations of him, some accurate, some wildly off-model, and pairing him with Kaito Ruma like it was canon. There was an AMV set to a melancholic anime ballad, clips and stills from the TikTok mixed with slow zooms on his face. Someone had drawn an entire fake manga panel of him, cradling Kaito's cheek, while cherry blossoms swirled around them. Then came the doujinshi, printed, bound, left anonymously in the return cart near the manga section. He found it while organizing new shipments, flipped open a page, and his ears turned crimson before he shoved it behind a stack of gardening almanacs. The second copy appeared the next day, then a third, each one bolder than the last. Customers, teenagers, mostly, began peeking around the aisles, giggling behind phone screens. The humiliating part wasn't just being watched, it was the way they looked at him now, like a character, like a trope. He'd become a meme, and the worst part, he hadn't seen Kaito since that night. Not that he was looking for him, of course, that would only fuel the already grotesquely exaggerated narrative. He hadn't thought about him, not even once, definitely not at 2 a.m. while scrolling through comments like "Ren's such a soft boy, Kaito better not break his heart," or "their wedding was a disaster, but their story is just beginning." No, he hadn't cared at all. So when the first strange fortune slip appeared on the counter that Thursday morning, it barely registered, folded neatly, tied with twine, no return address. Ren opened it absently. Your heart may have been broken, but another beats in tandem with yours. Your soulmate mourns beside you. You two are fated. Accept it. No signature. He crumpled the paper and threw it out. But the next day, there was another, this one placed inside a vintage poetry book on the front display, handwritten in the same flowing script. The wheel of fate turns only once for hearts like yours. You met under falling petals, that is no accident. You two are fated, accept it. By the third day, Ren had stopped pretending it wasn't strange. He began locking the front door at night, setting up a simple security camera, yet the notes kept appearing, slipped into shipments, tucked inside books mid-shelving, one even taped to the window with cherry blossom stickers. Word around Hanamachi was that the matchmaker spirit of the town shrine had finally chosen new victims, or favorites, depends on who you asked. Teenagers came in pretending to shop, filming discreetly, hoping to catch a glimpse of the now locally legendary Renkai. He overheard them whispering outside, "I bet they'll be in love by the summer festival. Do you think they've kissed yet? He's too shy. He's the type who runs away when he gets feelings." Humiliation wrapped its arms around Ren like a suffocating shawl. He wasn't a character, he was a man who had been left at the altar without explanation, whose private heartbreak had been turned into a fanfic starter pack. And now even the supernatural had gotten involved. The following Monday, Kaito showed up, no announcement, no warning, just the soft chime of the door, and there he was, leaning against the entrance, sunglasses perched on his head, and an awkward tight-lipped smile tugging at his mouth. Ren froze. Kaito looked tired. The suit was gone, replaced by a gray cardigan over a rumpled white shirt. A paper bag swung from his wrist. Coffee, maybe. He didn't speak at first, just took slow steps to the counter, and set the bag down gently. "I figured," he said, "if I brought peace offerings, you wouldn't punch me for being a walking PR disaster." Ren stared at him, his chest burned with something he didn't want to name. "You saw it?" he asked, voice low. Kaito scoffed. "Saw it. I've had 3 customers order wine with the line, 'You two are fated, accept it.' One girl sobbed when she thought I was straight." There was a beat of silence. Then unexpectedly, Ren laughed, just once, a bitter breathless laugh that caught even him off guard. "I didn't sign up for this," Ren muttered. "I just wanted to get married." Kaito nodded slowly. "Same. I thought. I don't know. That being with her meant I was building something. Turned out I was the supporting character in someone else's drama." They stood there, 2 men whose lives had unraveled in the most publicly humiliating way possible. Neither of them smiled. Not fully, but there was something else shared between them. Something weighty, something strange. And then Ren noticed it. On the floor, just beneath the doorframe, lay another fortune slip, folded, tied with twine, glinting slightly in the morning light. Ren hesitated, then bent down and opened it. Even when you resist, the threads bind you. One sees through the wine, the other through paper walls, but the truth waits at the shrine. You two are fated, accept it. Ren handed it silently to Kaito. Kaito read it, blinked, and gave a sharp exhale through his nose. "So now I'm hallucinating too. It's real," Ren said. And they both stood there, side by side in a shop that now felt less like a business, and more like a stage. Outside, a group of teenagers watched from across the street, holding phones up discreetly. One squealed. Kaito turned to him. "We could leave," he said. Ren looked up. "Go where?" Kaito shrugged. "Anywhere that doesn't have magical stalkers, TikTok fan edits, and hand-delivered fate notes." For a moment, Ren allowed himself to imagine it. Silence, no cameras, no pedals, just normalcy. But the image dissolved quickly. It was too late for that. As he looked back at Kaito, standing beneath the pale light of the bookstore's ceiling fan, he realized the humiliation hadn't ended with the wedding. It had transformed into something public, inevitable, tangled in the expectations of strangers, and the whispers of the supernatural. He didn't believe in fate, not really, but he couldn't deny the sound of it breathing down his neck. The matchmaker spirit was watching, and it would not stop until the prophecy was fulfilled. Ren didn't speak for a long time after Kaito's proposal. They were seated at the back of his bookstore, hunched over mugs of jasmine tea. Outside, the sky bled violet over Hanamachi, casting long shadows through the window panes. Inside, the buzz of viral attention was now a permanent fixture. Daily flower deliveries addressed to Renkai, tourists taking selfies near the window, and fortune slips appearing in books like cursed bookmarks. The matchmaker spirit was relentless. Kaito sipped his tea like he hadn't just said something outrageous. A fake dating arrangement, he repeated. Strictly strategic. We set the terms. We control the narrative. PR events. A few soft smiles. Maybe one staged photo of me dramatically gazing at you across a wine glass. And boom, we ride out the chaos until it dies down. Ren stared at the teacup. You want to lie to everyone. I want us to survive this town's romantic hysteria, without getting spiritually harassed into marriage. There was a pause, then Kaito added, almost too casually, we can even monetize it. Renkai branded bookmarks, limited edition sake, couples book club box. I run a bookstore, Ren replied flatly, not a dating app with a merchandise line, but his hands trembled slightly. The idea, ridiculous as it was, wasn't entirely without merit. The rumors were consuming him. Customers now asked about his boyfriend. Without hesitation, children referred to him as the poetry man from TikTok. His silence was only fueling more speculation. He could either deny the whole thing, or take the reins. I'll do it, Ren said at last, voice clipped. But under conditions. Kaito raised a brow. Samurai code. Ren lifted a finger. No touching unless required by event protocol. Noted. 2. No off-script emotional confessions. Kaito nodded, fighting a grin. 3. No falling in love. Now Kaito laughed outright. You think I'm that easily doomed? Ren's ears flushed, but his face stayed neutral. I'm serious. I know, Kaito said. That's what makes it funny. The first event was Sip and Swoon, Kaito's idea, hosted at his wine bar. A night of poetry readings paired with curated wines, designed for couples, creatives, and hopeless romantics. The invite flyer was unbearable, a sakura petal-strewn backdrop, with the tagline, "Let wine open your heart," and words seal it. Ren wanted to sink through the floor when he saw the guest list, over 70 attendees, and he was scheduled to close the night with a special live reading. He almost backed out, but Kaito texted, "You're the main character now, Ren, stop walking off screen." So Ren went, black turtleneck, blazer, an unreadable expression, pasted on like armor. The bar was glowing with candlelight and soft jazz. Couples mingled under hanging paper lanterns, glasses filled with plum wine, eyes already scanning for them. A spotlight flickered near the back, where a low stage had been arranged. The moment they entered, someone actually squealed. There they are. It's really Renkai. Ren froze, jaw tightening. Kaito leaned close, too close, and whispered with theatrical flourish, "Smile, samurai. The battlefield has eyes." They sat together at a private table, under a lantern shaped like a heart. Kaito was already in his element, swirling wine, murmuring commentary about the flavor profile of a 2013 Yamazaki blend. Ren, meanwhile, stared fixedly at the poetry pamphlet in front of him, willing himself not to blush every time someone snapped a photo. After 3 pairings, and a surprise cheeseboard, it was Ren's turn. He stepped up to the microphone, like he was walking to execution. The room quieted immediately. The background music faded. He began stiffly. This poem is about heartbreak. A hush fell. He didn't look at the audience. Instead, he looked at the paper in his hand. The words were short, measured, syllables like sharp glass. Your shadow stayed long after you left the room. Still I sweep around it. A gasp rippled through the room. He continued, you unbuttoned me with silence, not hands, and I could not refasten. Even the clock stopped. Afraid to keep time without your permission slips. Someone sniffled audibly. A couple at the back clasped hands. Someone muttered, "Oh my God," as if watching a slow-motion breakup. Ren's voice never faltered. But something else happened. As he read the final poem, the room dimmed around him, or perhaps brightened. No one could quite tell. It was subtle at first, a faint shimmer in the air, as though heat rippled through the stage. Then light, soft, pale, and not from any visible source, traced a faint aura around him. He glowed. Kaito, watching from the table, sat frozen, mouth slightly open. It was like watching the opening sequence of an anime. That moment when the protagonist, unaware of his own power, unconsciously awakens under the weight of his own truth. Ren was radiant in pain. Kaito's glass trembled in his hand. When the poem ended, the light faded. Ren blinked, dazed, unaware anything had changed. He bowed slightly, then walked back to their table, expression guarded. Applause erupted. Real thunderous applause. People rose from their seats. Some were crying. A middle-aged woman clutched her chest,
and declared him a poet saint of the heartbroken. Ren sat down, eyes wide. What just happened? Kaito stared at him. You lit up. What? You literally glowed. You were like anime protagonist final battle glowing. And everyone saw it. Ren turned pale. That's not possible. Kaito leaned in, voice low. Ren, this town has a spirit matchmaker. Anything's possible. And then in the middle of the thunderous applause, Ren's phone buzzed. Another notification. A TikTok clip already posted. His face haloed in gentle light, overlaid with sad piano music, and the text. He shined because his heart shattered. Renkai Ren. The poet faded love. Ren turned the phone over, face down. This is getting out of control. Yeah, Kaito said, watching the clip loop on his own screen. But you can't stop now. Ren didn't answer. He was too busy trying to ignore the way the last poem had come out of him, like a confession, trying not to notice how Kaito had looked at him, trying not to feel the matchmaker spirit watching, always watching. And somewhere, outside, a single cherry blossom petal landed at the doorstep of the wine bar. Despite it being months past Sakura season, the cooking class was supposed to be a harmless PR stunt, light-hearted, low risk, and full of opportunities for photogenic moments, a date-style culinary course, where couples learned how to make omuris and Sakura mochi, under the gentle encouragement of an elderly chef named Mori-sen, who wore an apron that said, "Kiss the cook," in glittery hiragana. Ren Arisaka approached it like a condemned man. The moment they stepped into the class, a warmly lit community kitchen, strung with bunting and framed photos of famous alumni couples, the eyes of the room zeroed in on them. Someone clapped, someone else whispered, "It's them, it's actually them." A third person surreptitiously tried to snap a photo, and forgot to mute their shutter sound. Kaito leaned in and murmured, "We should start charging for appearances." Ren straightened his posture, and hissed back, "Focus, I read up on the recipe last night." Kaito chuckled, "You read up? Ren, we're making omelets." This isn't a dissertation, but Ren was tense, rigid, entirely unsuited for anything involving a stovetop, let alone performing coordinated culinary intimacy under public scrutiny. The instructor clapped her hands, and announced they'd be working in pairs. Kaito gave a dramatic bow, and gestured for Ren to take the lead. The first egg hit the floor, within 2 minutes. It happened so suddenly, and with such perfect comic timing, that the entire room paused. Ren had raised the egg like it was sacred, concentrated deeply, and then squeezed too hard. The yolk slithered down his wrist with tragic resolve. Another egg followed shortly after, cracked mid-transition from hand to bowl, the contents splattering in a dismal arc across the counter. By the third egg, someone in the back began quietly giggling. Ren's face was crimson. "I used to be good at this," he mumbled. "Were you?" Kaito asked, not unkindly. "Was that in a dream? High school home EC?" "I was very precise." Kaito wiped his fingers on a towel, and handed Ren a fresh egg. "Try again." Slowly, Ren cracked it. Somehow, it exploded in 2 uneven halves, both shells dropping directly into the bowl. Another laugh escaped the crowd. Kaito smothered a grin. "You're gonna be the reason people fall in love with us. They already think I'm a tragic protagonist. I'm adding slapstick to the genre." "Multifaceted," Kaito said, nudging him gently. "You're building range." By the time they plated the final product, a half-burnt, half-runny omuris decorated with a shakily piped ketchup heart, they were awarded Most Adorable Attempt. The photo, shared on social media by the event staff, captioned, "When your love can't cook, but tries anyway, #Renkai, received 80,000 likes overnight. Ren refused to speak to anyone for the rest of the evening, but the humiliation wasn't over. 2 days later, they were invited to Kaito's family barbecue. It was Kaito's idea. Low-key, he'd said. Just burgers and family. Nothing weird. Ren arrived dressed in a buttoned shirt, khaki slacks, and the expression of someone bracing for an oral defense in front of 12 angry elders. The barbecue was in a sprawling countryside home on the edge of Hanamachi, surrounded by sakura trees, and a koi pond that seemed somehow too perfectly staged to be real. As soon as they entered the garden, the atmosphere changed. Kaito's mother waved politely. His father grunted a vague welcome. Cousins peered over ribs and potato salad. But it was the woman in the far corner, perched on a weathered bench, lace parasol in one hand, and a closed fan in the other, who captured Ren's full attention. She was ancient and majestic, draped in layers of lavender silk, with black lacquered nails, and eyes like polished obsidian. Her hair, silver and twisted into an intricate bun, glittered in the light, like wire. Her expression was neutral, too neutral. "That's Grandma Sumiko," Kaito said quietly. "Just don't lie to her. She knows things." Ren blinked. "Knows things." Kaito didn't elaborate. They hadn't even made it halfway through the grilled sweet corn before Sumiko summoned Ren with a single crooked finger. The entire yard went quiet. He approached her slowly, like a soldier walking into a sniper's range. She said nothing at first, just studied him, eyes sweeping from head to shoes, then back again. He felt more seen than he ever had in his life, and more judged. Finally, she opened her fan with a sharp snap, and said, "You're the one." Ren swallowed. "I'm sorry, for Kaito," she said. "You're the one. Don't screw this up, my boy." The entire family went silent. Kaito, from across the garden, froze mid-sip. Sumiko continued, her voice steely. "You wear grief like a kimono. It suits you, but don't drown in it. My grandson is loud and reckless, but he's lonely, and you're the first man I've seen him look at like he's not pretending." Ren's mouth opened, then closed. "I don't. This isn't." Snap. The fan struck him on the side of the head, firm and precise. He recoiled. "Ow." Sumiko's skake. First strike. Denial of truth. "I wasn't." Snap. The second blow caught his shoulder. Second strike. Avoidance of feeling. Ren raised a hand, as if to shield himself. "This is a misunderstanding." Snap. A third hit, square on his forehead. "Third strike," she said, "for cowardice." The entire family pretended not to be watching, though several clearly were. Kaito had his hand over his mouth, shoulders shaking. Ren stood there, eyes wide, cheeks flushed, hair now slightly askew, from the psychic grandmother's judgment fan. Sumiko folded the fan with finality, and smiled, the smallest curve of satisfaction on her lips. "You may sit now." Ren shuffled back to the picnic table, shoulders hunched. "You okay?" Kaito whispered, grinning. "She assaulted me. She lightly tapped you with destiny. She hit me 3 times. You probably deserved 5. Ren sulked in silence, chewing barbecue ribs like they'd wronged him personally. Later that night, after most of the guests had left, and the koi pond shimmered under soft lanterns, Ren wandered to the edge of the garden alone. He needed air, distance, silence, but he wasn't alone for long. Kaito joined him, 2 cups of leftover soda in hand. "She doesn't say stuff like that lightly," he said. "Your grandma's terrifying. She used to run a card parlor, above a noodle shop. Rumor is she once cursed a guy, with just a glare." Ren took the drink, sighed. "She said I'm perfect for you." Kaito nodded. "Yeah, she said that, and that I shouldn't screw it up." Kaito's gaze flicked sideways, unreadable. "You planning to?" Ren didn't answer. He sipped his soda and looked away. The night was cool. The cherry blossoms above rustled faintly. They didn't speak again, but stood there, shoulder to shoulder, close enough for silence to say things they didn't know how to. Behind them, the paper fan rested on Sumiko's lap, like a sheathed sword. The matchmaker spirit watched, and somewhere, tucked beneath Ren's car windshield wiper, another fortune slip fluttered. The heart cannot be stirred with logic. Only flame, only breath, only risk. You two are fated. Accept it.
The wine bar glittered with celebration. Soft string lights wove between beams overhead, casting golden warmth over the gathering crowd. A jazz quartet played near the patio, and a makeshift banner stretched across the bar's entrance. "Cheers to 3 years. Romeo Wine Bar Anniversary." The staff were dressed in matching burgundy aprons, and Kaito had personally curated a limited wine flight labeled The Lover's Pour, featuring a sakura-infused rosé named, to Ren's horror, Fated Kiss. Ren stood near the back wall, one hand around a glass he hadn't touched, the other in his pocket trying to fade into the exposed brick. This wasn't his night. This wasn't his world. It was loud and warm, and full of people who looked at him like he was part of a beautiful story that had already been written for them. Kaito had tried to pull him into the spotlight earlier, just a quick photo, a toast maybe. Ren had declined, politely but firmly. He preferred watching Kaito from the sidelines. The way he worked the room, laughing with old customers, pouring wine with easy charm. Ren didn't belong in that light. He was the footnote, the poetic interlude, not the main attraction. That fragile detachment shattered the moment Takeshi walked in. The room didn't recognize him. They didn't know the sharp-jawed man in the pressed navy blazer, who moved with the confidence of someone used to attention. But Ren knew. Instantly. Takeshi's presence split the night in half. He hadn't changed, not in posture, not in expression. The same cool confidence, the same quiet arrogance. Ren froze. The wine in his glass rippled. Kaito, across the room, noticed the shift first in Ren's expression, then followed his gaze. His own eyes narrowed the moment they landed on Takeshi. Takeshi saw Ren and walked directly toward him. No hesitation. "Ren," he said smoothly, stopping just a foot away. "You look well." Ren stared at him. "You shouldn't be here. I heard there was a party." Takeshi gestured around. "Didn't know it was yours." Or, his eyes flicked toward Kaito, who was already approaching with deliberate calm. "I was invited by a mutual friend." Takeshi added. "You don't have any friends here," Ren said. Takeshi smiled faintly. "That's true. I suppose I was hoping to change that. Start over." Kaito stepped in then, casual but sharp, placing himself beside Ren with an unspoken claim. "You're interrupting a celebration," Kaito said. "And I don't think anyone here is interested in nostalgia." Takeshi turned to him, unimpressed. "And you are." "I'm the one who showed up," Kaito said simply. "That makes me a lot of things." Ren wanted to disappear. Every pair of eyes in the room was slowly, inexorably drifting toward them. The tension curled tight and hot between the three of them like a fuse waiting for spark. Takeshi stepped closer. "I made a mistake," he said, lowering his voice. "I left. I shouldn't have. You know that, Ren. We don't have to play this game." Ren's heart hammered in his chest. "You humiliated me," he said quietly. Takeshi tilted his head. "You're the one kissing men on stage now. I think we're even." The room didn't need to hear the words to understand something was happening. Whispers fluttered like wind in tall grass. Phone cameras lifted discreetly. Kaito stiffened, but it was Ren who moved. He didn't think, didn't plan. He just stepped forward, grabbed Kaito by the collar, and kissed him. It wasn't polite. It wasn't staged. It was impulsive, desperate, and slightly clumsy, his hands clenched in Kaito's shirt, his entire body leaning in with force and fire. It silenced the room like thunder. For one long second, nothing else existed. When he pulled away, he realized what he'd done. Everyone stared. Kaito blinked, stunned, but his lips were curved in something like awe. He touched his chest lightly, breath caught. Ren's own fingers trembled. The moment dragged, stretched like a cello string. Then the screams began. The room erupted. Cheers. Applause. Phones raised, capturing every angle. People clapped. Some cried. One woman dropped her wineglass in shock. Someone shouted, "Renkai is real." And another, "They've ascended." But above all the chaos, something else happened. Something unseen by most, but not all. From the space just above their heads, a faint shimmer of light flickered, soft and rose gold, like sunlight through sakura petals. It pulsed once, then settled into a glowing sigil, a small floating heart, perfectly symmetrical, suspended between them like a celestial tether. Only a handful of guests saw it. A girl near the stage gasped, hands over her mouth. A middle-aged man dropped his phone. The jazz pianist faltered, staring up in wonder. "Is that floating?" someone whispered. The heart glowed brighter for a second, then faded from visibility, but the echo of it lingered, as if something invisible had snapped into place. Kaito, eyes still wide, exhaled slowly. "Ren." But Ren wasn't listening. He saw Takeshi's expression part smug, part wounded. He saw the camera flashes, the hungry curiosity in everyone's eyes. And he felt the weight of his own impulsiveness crashing down like a wave. He ran, out the side door, through the back alley, into the quiet hum of the night. The streets of Hanamachi were dark and mostly empty, the air crisp with the scent of spring soil. Ren leaned against a lamppost, and tried to breathe. His chest felt like it was on fire, not from the kiss, from everything. He had just made Kaito a prop, again, No better than what Takeshi had done to him. And worse, he had kissed him not because of love, not because he was ready, but because he wanted to end the conversation, end the humiliation. And yet, that kiss, it hadn't been empty. Kaito found him 10 minutes later, walking quietly across the bridge near the shrine. Ren didn't turn around when he heard the footsteps. "I'm sorry," he said. "You're always apologizing," Kaito replied gently. Ren gripped the railing. "It was a mistake, was it?" Ren turned to him, face pale. "You don't understand. That kiss wasn't for you, it was for me. I wanted to prove something to Takeshi. I used you." Kaito nodded, slowly. "Yeah, you did." Ren flinched, but Kaito added, stepping closer, "You didn't fake it." Ren blinked. "That kiss," Kaito said. "You meant it. Maybe not the moment, maybe not the reason, but the feeling, that was real." Ren shook his head. "Even if it was, I'm not ready." "I know," Kaito said, stopping just an arm's length away, "but I am." They stood in silence, lit by the soft red glow of the shrine lanterns. The wind picked up, scattering a handful of sakura petals across the bridge, though the season had long passed. Then a soft sound, like paper brushing stone. Ren turned. Another fortune slip rested beside his foot. He picked it up with trembling fingers. "One kiss cannot define love, but it can awaken it. The seal has appeared. You are now bound, not by mistake, but by truth. You two are fated. Accept it." Ren looked up at Kaito. Kaito met his gaze calmly, without pressure, without demand, just patience. And Ren, despite everything, nodded once. It wasn't a beginning, not yet, but it was no longer an end. The silence that followed was not peaceful, it was thick, louder than shouting, the kind of silence that swallows up time, turning hours into aching moments. Ren didn't return Kaito's messages, not out of spite, out of fear, fear of himself, of the possibility he hadn't imagined what he felt, that the seal they had seen, the kiss that had awakened something deep and terrifying, meant more than he was ready to hold. And yet, every morning, he found himself walking past the wine bar. Every night, he stood at the threshold of a message he wouldn't send. Kaito didn't push, he didn't show up at the bookstore, he didn't demand explanations, but he also didn't vanish. Sometimes, Ren would see his shadow move behind the wine bar's frosted windows, refilling bottles, laughing with staff. That quiet steadiness haunted him more than anger would have. Then came the nightmare. It was sharp and sudden. Ren awoke breathless, shirt clinging to his chest, fists clenched in the bedsheets. He'd dreamt of Takeshi, not in the past, but here, now, standing over him, whispering everything he had feared in the quiet of his mind. "You were never enough. You're just a placeholder. Even now, you're still waiting for permission to be wanted." The echo of that voice refused to fade. He didn't think, he didn't even grab a coat. He walked, 3 a.m., and his feet took him to the wine bar. Kaito lived above it. Ren stood at the door for a long time before knocking. Once, Kaito opened it in seconds. He looked like he hadn't been asleep at all. He didn't speak, just stepped aside and let Ren in. Ren stood in the hallway, chest tight, hands trembling. "I had a nightmare." Kaito nodded. Ren's voice cracked. It felt real. Without a word, Kaito reached forward and pulled him into an embrace. No fanfare, no hesitation, just arms around him, warm and strong, holding Ren as if the ground could fall away, and it wouldn't matter. "You're not alone," Kaito whispered. "Not anymore." Ren gripped his shirt like it was the only anchor he had. They didn't talk much after that. Kaito brewed tea. They moved quietly to Ren's apartment, which felt more like home now that someone else existed in it. They sat on the floor with blankets and half-drunk mugs, windows open to the night sky. Stars shimmered faintly above Hanamachi, as if the town itself had stilled for them. "I was always the one left behind," Ren said softly. Kaito wasn't the first, just the last straw. Kaito looked at him, his gaze steady. "I thought if I kept my life loud enough, no one would notice how empty it was. I only ever wanted someone who'd sit in the quiet with me." And they did. They fell asleep against each other, a quiet tangle of limbs and silence. And that was when the fox appeared, tiny, snow-white, with a flicking tail tipped in lavender. It curled up neatly at their feet, invisible to all but them, and only when they were together in sync. Its presence was soft, spectral, glowing faintly in the hush of the early morning. When Ren stirred and opened his eyes,
He saw it nestled near Kaito's foot, breathing slow and sure. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, and the fox blinked back at him. When Kaito opened his eyes moments later, he saw it too. Neither said a word. They didn't need to. The fox didn't move, only curled tighter, a guardian of the moment, as if the spirit world had sent a quiet approval. They named it Fuyu, though it never responded to names. It only appeared in moments of trust. Asterisk. Chapter 7. Bookstore nights and forever keys. Weeks passed. Slowly, they stitched life together. The town buzzed less now. The viral storm calmed into something softer, affectionate, protective, like an audience that no longer demanded spectacle, only quiet hope. Ren's bookstore became the backdrop for calm evenings. Kaito read there sometimes, helping stock wine recommendations, next to love poetry. They didn't fake smiles anymore. They just were. One evening, Kaito asked Ren to come by the shop after closing. When Ren arrived, he found the wine bar transformed. String lights hung from the ceiling, in gentle arcs. Paper lanterns floated on delicate threads, some shaped like foxes. The tables were gone, replaced by a scattering of pillows and tea candles. In the center sat a small white box of cupcakes. Each one had a letter. Together they spelled, finally. Their closest friends were there, the quiet, true ones. Not fans, not followers, people who had known them before they were symbols. Kaito stood under the lights, eyes steady. He didn't have a ring, he had a key, a small silver key, strung on a black thread. I don't have vows, he said. I have doors, and I want you to have one that always opens to me. Ren didn't move at first, then he stepped forward. He took the key in both hands, like it was sacred. His fingers trembled, and then before the room, he spoke. I didn't believe in love, he said. Not really. I believed in effort, in staying. I believed in survival. His voice cracked, but he didn't stop. And then I met you, Kaito Ruma. I met someone who didn't run, someone who didn't ask me to be anything other than the person I already was. You taught me that real love isn't loud. It's the one who shows up when you can't breathe. It's the one who holds your silence with both hands, and doesn't try to fill it. He paused. I survived. And now I want to live. He took the key, and the moment he did, the floating heart seal above them, long invisible, shimmered into view. The room gasped. It pulsed once, then split in two. Each half drifted down like a falling petal, one to Ren, one to Kaito, and melted into their chests with soft light, a symbol no longer floating between them, but within them. Love no longer observed, love absorbed. They kissed, not for the town, not for the legend, not for the seal, or the spirit fox, or the story the world thought they were writing. They kissed for themselves, truly, finally, joyfully. And in the corner of the room, unnoticed by most, the tiny spirit fox watched with blinking eyes, its fur glowing brighter than ever, a gentle witness to the truth, that fated or not, they had chosen each other, and that was more powerful than magic.